I got kicked out of college 6 times in a year and a half. I thought that I was either going to be dead or in jail. But that cliff top comes and that feeling like right now I'm living well beyond any dreams that I had for myself. When you taste significance, success never tastes the same again. The shift began to come into adding value to people, and man, my cup is full every single day.
Welcome to the Masters of Business podcast with Daniel Beer.
So we have the executive vice president of Maxwell Leadership. That's right, John Maxwell's organization, helping tens and tens and tens of thousands of people all across the world. I think it would probably be very accurate to say hundreds of thousands of people. And the guy driving a lot of their entire organization, all of the coaching that happens there. We have with us Chris Robinson, who's also has an amazing book coming out that I absolutely encourage you to go and pre-order. It's called Drift to Drive. We'll jump into that. But first, Chris, I just want to say thank you for being here. It's a real honor, especially from an organization like Maxwell. It is something that most of us in business have gotten exposure to in some degree, largely probably because of you. So first off, let me just say thank you.
Well, thank you. And thank you so much for having me and giving me the opportunity to just love what we get to do at Maxwell Leadership. And that's add value to people every single day. And so I'm excited about our conversation and more importantly, excited about the people that are going to get an opportunity to hear this so that we can add value to them.
Well, you know, your organization's become one of the, if not the most recognized leadership coaching companies in the whole world. And something just, you know, even just in our preliminary conversation, just before we turned on right here on the podcast officially, it just really struck me. And I wanted to continue it here. We're talking, it's about high achievers. High achievers invariably will start to find that place where they become the lid of their organization. And it's something that we've been discussing a lot internally. And do you have the self-awareness to even recognize that it's happening? So that's a whole conversation of its own, which we can have. But just on a fundamental basis, if you're a high achiever, then doesn't it contradict the idea of becoming complacent, of becoming the lid? Yet it happens, I think it actually happens to everybody. It becomes a rite of passage that you either work through or you get stuck at. And that's part of the test and the lesson. But why does it happen at all?
Yeah, well, so let's go back to this, Daniel, because when you hear the word complacency, you know, that word is most often associated with apathy or laziness. And, you know, so when we think of high achievers, we do not think of complacency at all. And I mean, if you called 100 people right now, Daniel, and said, hey, I'm getting ready to speak with Chris Robinson. Is Chris Robinson a complacent guy? I'm guessing 99.9% would say no. But here's the truth. I have complacency in my life. You have complacency in your life if we redefine it. Now, if you go back to the origin of the word complacency, the origin of it means careless security. Careless security. Yeah. And complacency is a place of comfort. And the way that I redefine the word complacency in the book is it's called a secret place of satisfactory success. Now think about that. Now we all have those areas of our life where good is good enough.
Say that again, a secret place of?
Satisfactory success.
Okay. Satisfactory success.
So verbally, and you know, we may be saying that, hey, I want to go to this next level. I want to do this thing. But internally, secretly, we're like, well, okay, I don't want to pay that price again. I don't want to do that work again. Or if it doesn't come as easy as the initial growth come, I don't really want to do that again. And so when I look at complacency, what we're trying to do with this book is to awaken those areas, diagnose those areas where you might be complacent, because we all have it. If we look at our overall life. Now, you may not be complacent in your workplace or your marriage, but if you look at all the different areas, there's places where you worked really hard to get there. You went from a 0 skill set to about an 8. You got good. That's good enough. But to get that last 20%, which is the gap between your good and your potential, it requires a lot more work. And quite frankly, Daniel, we just don't want to pay the price.
Man, so are reading between the lines, are you saying that last 20%, it requires like not just 20% more effort, but kind of an exponential jump
Yeah, it requires a lot more effort to pick up that last 20% because you're fine tuning at that point. You're really working on nuances and details. So I'll give you an example of where I seen complacency show up in my life last year, right before the impetus of this book.
Hmm.
So I was out with John Maxwell. Him and I flew to Cambodia to speak.
Oh, cool.
And, this is a speaker's dream. I mean, it is me. There's only two speakers on the agenda, me and John Maxwell. We're speaking to 2,500 people. And right before that, we go and meet with the president or the prime minister of Cambodia. So, I mean, I'm feeling good, Daniel. I mean, I just come out of the prime minister's office. John's got his arm around my shoulder. I'm getting ready to go speak to 2,500 people. And I get there and I deliver a talk. Now, things start to go wrong. My remote doesn't work. No big deal. I'm a pro. I've done this before, and we get it eventually working. I'm speaking with an interpreter, and it's a little bit of a rocky rhythm because I say a couple sentences, they say a couple sentences, and this is a brand new language. Then, typically when I speak internationally, there's two screens, one with the English language, one with the native language. Well, in this language, Daniel, what happens is they don't allow separate languages. Their language has to go above any other language. So they took my slides, threw it all together. It basically looked like somebody just threw up a Scrabble board and it just landed on the ground. And that was my slide deck. And I pushed through all of that and I got it done and it was good. And then afterwards, there was a line of people saying, "Oh, Chris, this was so great, so awesome." But then I did something afterwards. I had dinner with John and about 5 other people. So at dinner, anytime I'm around John, I got a notepad and a pen. And I say, "Hey, John, could you give me some feedback on my talk?" Now, granted, Daniel, I've spoken thousands of times. I've
Yes.
been doing this for, a decade and a half, and I'm sitting down with John Maxwell, who's been doing it 50 years. So he's got a different view. And I say, "John, give me some feedback on my talk today." He says, "Oh, I'd love to." He went through 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 10 things he had, and then the table starts jumping in to tell me what I needed to fix. And I'm just going, "Thank you." But then when I went back to look at that, Daniel, to look at everything that they had said, no one had told me anything that I did not know or that I did not do. What happened was I did not prepare for that opportunity the way that I did years before when I was just trying to go speak for a free lunch at a Rotary Club, when I was trying to go speak at a Chamber of Commerce. I did more work back then than I did speaking for, 2,500 people in the country of Cambodia. And I went, "Oh my goodness, I'm in a drift. I'm in complacency." So we all have a level that we get to where our good is good enough, where we feel like we don't really have to work on it as hard as we used to. So that shot me into this spiral of, man, I've got this gift. I've got this calling. I need to jump back on this thing and start crafting again. And it did, man. It fired me up and it got me moving in the right direction.
A really cool little nuance that I also pick up in that is the fact that, so I've been right there. Okay. So I haven't spoken nearly on the kind of stages you've spoken at, or right with the prime minister of any country. But in my industry, I've been on many, many, many. In my industry, I'm a speaker. And so I'm considered to be a good speaker. But when I come off, I always want the feedback. But in my own mind, I feel funny about asking, "Hey, how did I do? What notes do you have for me?" Because I fear, and this is really just, right, life just becomes one big mirror. I fear that it will come off as fishing for a compliment. And that it will come off as I'm just wanting to hear that it went really well. When really I want the feedback, the true feedback. So two things are going on there. One is you have a circle that's willing to give it to you. That on its own, I mean, that's a world of lesson right on its own. And then secondly, there's an understanding and a trust that, and you just have a confidence about, you're not letting your mind get bothered with what are they going to think? What are they going to do? Do they think I have some other? You're just asking for what you need. And most people, especially at a high level, we don't ask for help enough.
Right, correct. And that's a big mistake. But here's the thing that I want to tell you, Daniel, when asking for that feedback, though, you have to understand that feedback wasn't me asking the crowd because I know that I can bypass the average ear.
Mm.
Okay. So that feedback was specific to Maxwell and some other people that were speakers at the table, I want to hear their perspective because they hear things and nuances that the average ear can't hear. Again, afterwards, I had a line of people, oh, this was so awesome. This was so great. And I got John Maxwell, the number one in the world, going, you got some work to do, kid.
Yeah. That's
And
awesome.
so it's getting that specific feedback from the people with the right ears that really makes that difference. Not everyone. And so after that, I began working with comedian Michael Jr. He was watching videos and giving me feedback from a comedic perspective and just overall internal perspective. I work with Roddy Galbraith, who is just a phenomenal speaker coach. I was sending him videos after that again, as I did before, as I was coming through the program. And I still continue today as we watch the footage, we get feedback. You have to detach from that and go, hey, this isn't about me. This is about me delivering a better presentation to add more value to people. And if you can get yourself out the way, man, the growth that can happen and the enthusiasm that you get, man, just goes to a whole nother level.
So most of our listeners aren't speakers, aren't aspiring to
Correct.
be. So let's translate. How does
Yeah.
how does this lesson translate to the day of your average entrepreneur? Not that the entrepreneur is average, but meaning just somebody who's not
Yeah.
aspiring to be a speaker, but is trying to build their real estate brokerage, their dentistry practice, their chiropractic
Right.
practice, et cetera. How would it translate to them?
It all translates because whatever skill set you're trying to develop, it requires the exact same things to grow. So you need three things to grow in any area of life. You need knowledge, you need experience, and you need coaching. You need knowledge, experience, and coaching. And so this is a simplified version of the 7 steps that I take you through the book, and we can go through those here in just a second. But if you need to have knowledge because you have to have a base of information. In order to become a chiropractor, what they did was they went through school, they got a base, and it's there. The next thing they had to do was they were learning from someone in order to build their business. So that meant that they were part of some chiropractic coaching association or mastermind group, getting around other chiropractors to develop the skill to build their business. And then they actually had to do something with it. And, so this cycle works for everything. The exact same cycle works for hobbies. I mean, Daniel, I took this exact same 7 steps to become a pro teaching pickleball player. Okay. So it works for everything when we follow these steps.
Well, there's no doubt. I mean, I'm building right now the very beginnings of an investment company in the real estate space. Okay,
Sure.
so I have my brokerage company, but
Mhm.
a company that goes direct to sellers that need to get out of their home right now, and
Mhm.
it's in the investment space. The first thing, I mean, we don't even have the LLC together yet,
Right.
but we've already hired the coach and made a
Yep.
$60,000 commitment.
Yes.
And it just becomes natural. Right? It
Right.
becomes very obvious that's the step. So I want to go here though. You're working with all these high performers. They
Yeah.
care enough to hire you and your organization.
Mhm.
So they're clearly driven. And yet you get to this place where complacency, we've discussed that, but I want to look at it from the angle of sabotage. Do
Yeah.
we sabotage our own success? Do we
Mhm.
do it consciously or unconsciously, and why?
Ooh, that's a good question. It's yes and no. And, the reason is, yes, we do it because sometimes the fear of success is just as real as the fear of failure.
Mm.
So we do it because we feel like we don't deserve it. We feel like we don't belong in that category. We feel like, so many different things that hold us back from going, man, am I really that person? Or, we sabotage ourselves intentionally unintentionally because we're just unaware. We just don't know. And that's why it happens. And that comes from being in a drift. That's having a lack of clarity of what it is that you want at whatever level of success that you want. It comes from not being around the right people. It comes from not having the right information. It comes from not taking action because we've already paid the price and we're just not willing to do it. So we do self sabotage intentionally and unintentionally. But while we do it, it varies. It really varies.
I watched maybe the best Instagram reel that I've
Hmm.
ever watched.
Yeah.
And it was Will Smith.
Yeah.
It was Will Smith, and he was talking about how, there's rock bottom, and we're all
Yeah.
familiar with rock bottom or the concept of, and many of us have been there, touched it. But in any case, We understand it, whether you've been there or not.
Right.
But then he talked about how and this is what you're reminding me of, how on the other end of the spectrum, there's what he called cliff top.
Yeah.
So there's rock bottom, but just as difficult, um, just as trying and painful is this thing called cliff top when you reach a level of money, of success, of fame in his case, he was rattling off all these areas of life that you you have it, and then you start to see, hold on, all this from the outside doesn't affect my inside.
Inside. Right.
And so you go off what he called cliff top, and
Right.
and per his description, because he's been there,
Right.
it it's pretty much the identical vibration as rock bottom.
Right. Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
I thought that was really. Do you think that's
Yeah.
along the lines of what you see people
Yeah.
go through?
Oh, yeah,
You
absolutely, because
recognize as clients in that.
yeah, and even it doesn't even have to be as extreme as cliff top. It's if you live beyond the dreams that you had for yourself as an individual, that's your cliff top.
Hmm.
Okay, so we all have it. Because for me, today I'm living well beyond the dreams that I had before myself as a child. I thought that I was either, to be honest with you, I thought that I was going to either be dead or in jail. Okay, I mean that was the path that I was
Where'd you
on.
grow up?
I grew up in Oklahoma City.
Okay.
I was a athlete and got into partying and drinking at a very early age. Got a scholarship to college to play baseball. Got kicked out of college 6 times in a year and a half.
Yeah.
And then end up having two DUIs by the age of 21. And I'm standing before the judge, just as I thought that I would be one day. And he said to me, he said, "Hey, if you don't turn things around, you're going to be dead or in jail." And he said, "Hey, I'm going to do 2 things for you." He said, one, I'm not going to give you jail time. He goes, because I was a licensed stockbroker at that time. And, I was very young. He was like, "You can't be that dumb of a kid to be able to pass this type of a test." He goes, "You got potential." He said, "Then I'm going to give you everything I can to throw the book at you besides jail." So you're talking say top, AA, blow tube in the car, community service, everything you could possibly do. And that worked. It helped me snap out of what I was doing because I was in a
Mhm.
drift because I couldn't see beyond the age of 20, 22. That's where I thought that I was either gonna be dead or in jail. And so that cliff top comes and that feeling, like, right now, like I said, I'm living well beyond any dreams that I had for myself. But as you find, that fulfillment and that calling, and you go from not just seeking out success. Now, here's the big gap, and this is what I love about John Maxwell and how he shaped my life, is that success tastes great, but it tastes nothing like significance. And when you taste significance, success never tastes the same again. And so instead of stuff and things, the shift began to come into adding value to people. And man, my cup is full every single day. And so that I believe the cliff top can happen at any phase where you're just living beyond a dream that you had when you were young.
Have you ever, do you remember the name of the judge?
Yeah,
Did you ever track him down?
yeah. So get this, Daniel. This is phenomenal. So I talk about Judge Pelican is his name
Okay.
in the book, and I talk about that in the book Drift to Drive. But get this. This was a full circle story. So that was around 2001. In 2013, I'm the keynote speaker at this event. And I sit down at the table, and, it's the reserved table for the speakers and the special guest. And sitting next to me is Judge Pelican. Now, you ever, met somebody for the first time, but they don't know it's not the first time that you guys met? This was that moment. And so they introduced me to Judge Pelican. I'm sitting there, and I mean, I'm starting to sweat, Daniel, because I'm like, oh my goodness, this is the guy that really was pivotal in my life. And it's like, do I say something or not? And so, I mustered up the courage and I said, "Judge Pelican, I want you to know that, you know, 12 years ago, I was inside your courtroom. You told me I was going to be dead or in jail. I turned things around. Today, I'm your keynote speaker." And
That's so
man,
cool.
it was really just an incredible moment. And just really neat to see that Judges make an impact and a difference. Parents, everybody, you never know who's going to turn into something if you just give them a chance.
And it's an awesome example of how those DUIs turn into a blessing.
Yeah, yeah, indeed,
You know,
indeed.
and so there, that I love that is so cool, man. That is very, very cool. Did he remember you at that point or no?
No, no, he still didn't remember me. He's got thousands of people that come through. He didn't remember me, but I can tell you since then, I mean, for those that may be out there struggling, from that point, I haven't had a single drip of alcohol since 2001. And, it was really, really a significant turning point in my life.
Wow, that is awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, it, it's a great example of what all the great teachers out there teach, the Maxwells, the Tony Robbins, and so
Right,
on. It's not what happens, but
right.
rather you had an opportunity to because look, this, like you said, he didn't even remember you because he issued that same philosophy. I'm sure he didn't just bestow
Yeah,
that philosophy on you.
right.
He issued that same philosophy on people who are currently dead and in jail.
Right, yeah,
And so yes, he was a blessing. And at the same time, s- y- you took it, you accepted it. It's like
yeah,
I love that story, right? That story
yeah,
about how it goes. I'll butcher it, but basically, someone like trying to get across a river with rushing rapids, and
right,
and says, "God, please help me," right? And please help me get across. God, and he's praying to God, and here comes someone with a like a raft, and he's like,
right,
"No, no, no, get out of here! I'm waiting for God,"
right,
and someone comes with a bow. He says, "Nah, get out of here! I'm waiting for God." And then God,
right,
and then I forget how I forget if he drowns or
right,
doesn't drown or what happens, but he goes before God. He's like, "God, why didn't you help me?" Son, I did. Like, I sent you
right.
a raft. I sent you a boat, right? And so you
Right,
saw
right.
that you were sent this opportunity.
Yeah,
You s-
yeah,
Uh, so you get to have a personal relationship with truly one of the great thinkers of our time and great
yeah,
contributors of our time. Because,
yeah,
and I want to just differentiate that because one thing is just to be stuck in thought, but you know, John Maxwell has found the way to actually have it drop in, right, for so
right,
many. So you had a personal relationship with him.
yeah, yeah,
What when you think of what you've been able to learn or get directly from your experience with him,
yeah,
that you just get that different vantage point.
yeah.
Where do you think that he's most touched your life, as a direct result of just the proximity that you get to have?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. I feel like I'm getting emotional right now just thinking about it because it truly is a special opportunity I have to be around, a leader like him. I get a lot of time with John and had the privilege of him pouring into my life directly and personally for years. And, there's some stuff that can be taught by John in the books, but then there's stuff that's caught by John by proximity. And being able to be around him in proximity and to seeing how he truly adds value to people, not just on the stage, but off the stage. Um, and what I've learned from John and what he models for me the most is making sure that that gap between who we are on stage and who we are in person are very close. Because sometimes, I don't know about you, Daniel, you've been around some great thought leaders and things of that nature. And sometimes I've been around some of them and like, man, I love their book. And then I meet them and I'm like, ooh, I love their book. Right. But with John Maxwell,
Yeah.
he is probably the closest to who he is on stage to who he is off stage of any other person I've been around. I give an example of this. John is always known for, hey, I want to add value to people every single day. There was one time we were out playing golf, and we are playing golf, and every so often he would just pop off, and he would be speaking with the landscaping people, and interesting because in the golf world, landscapers are not to be seen or heard. They're to pause when we're walking up, and they're to be a part of the course, right? Well, John is speaking to every single landscaper that he sees, and but then not only is he speaking to them, he's actually tipping them. And I said, "John, did you just hand him cash?" He goes, "Well, yeah." He goes, "Oh," he goes, "Chris," he goes, "I love that." He goes, "Nobody tips the landscapers." He goes, "Everybody tips the cart guys, everybody tips the caddy, everybody tips the cart girl." He goes, "Nobody tips the landscapers." He goes, "Oh, I get to add value where no one else adds value."
Yeah.
I just started laughing but again, it's things like that where just being in proximity where you see him go out of his way to not add value to those that are in position, but when he's walking through, the back alleys of a hotel and where all the service workers are working and he's stopping to talk to people. I mean, we sit back and love on people in the back of the house more than we do on the front of the house. I mean, so getting to experience that and get to see him truly live out what he writes about has just been amazing.
To me, that story is so when there's people in the world and society in different corners that we don't see, it's because at the end of the day, there's little corners of ourselves that we don't want seen,
Right.
right? And so you're talking about John, a person who lives in great integrity, true authenticity, right? That
Right.
tiny minimal gap between stage and off
Right.
stage. And so when you are that into right, when you're that integrated with, like, who you are, when there's not corners of yourself that you don't want seen, right? Life is
Mhm.
this big mirror where if there's an aspect of you don't want people to see, then there's an aspect of those around you that you're gonna not notice, right? Or that you're going
Yeah.
to not see. And no one's trying to I don't think anybody is, trying to diss
Right.
the landscaper.
Right.
It's
Correct.
just genuinely not seen.
Right.
But
Correct.
when all of yourself is shining, right? I don't think he's strategically saying, "Hey, let me go do this. It'll be great. It'll be like, I'll look
Right.
so
No,
but they're
he is
shining
not.
right in front of him because there's
Right.
no part of himself he's trying to hide." And so
Right.
that's really cool. That's really, really, really good. So in your book, and again, it's on pre-order right now,
Yeah.
or depending on when you're listening to this, but you could be listening to this a year later, and so go get the book. It's already
Right.
out.
Yeah.
But as of time of this interview, it's on pre-order. It's Drift to Drive, and it's the moment I knew, hey, this could be for me.
Right.
It's that 7-step framework,
Right.
and so
Right.
there's some books that are just steeped in great philosophy, in great wisdom, and great, then it's hard to capture it and integrate it into your life. And to me, there's a lot of people that just read and they read and they read, but there's no
Right.
action behind it.
Right.
And it's kind of, it's not that different from just watching a movie, but guess what? You didn't turn into Rambo. Like,
Right. That's correct.
so when I see 7-step framework, I go, oh, like
Yeah.
Chris has made it easier for me to actually do
Right.
something with this. So
Yeah.
can you take us in there to whatever degree you want?
Yeah, yeah, man. I'd love to talk about that because I love practical application. So every time that I teach, every time that I speak, every time I have a conversation, and I'm trying to give practical application, how do I make this simplified in order for someone to not just hear it and feel good, but hear and go, you know what? I can do that. I can do that. So in this 7-step framework, what we were trying to initially solve for when I was writing this book is we were looking for and I was wanting to solve the problem for underperformance because that, a lot of people underperform in a lot of different areas. And how we came up with complacency is because complacency is actually the root cause of underperformance. And so we said, oh, let's attack the root of the underperformance and not even talk about that. But then once you recognize that you're underperforming or that you're complacent in a place, what do you do to kick back in gear to get the cycle going so you can get movement again? So I came up with the 7-step framework and I didn't just come up and go, oh, I think this would be a good idea. I went back and looked at every single time that I had a significant result in my life, this process was followed. Okay, so I've followed this for years. And so when they ask me, well, Chris, how do you come up with an idea, learn something new, and then, you know, it appears in your life? Well, I do use these 7 steps. And so the first step is just simply clarity. It is simply, what do you want? What do you want? You see, a defined, focused, meaningful vision for your future and movement with intention, not just motion. Most people are stuck or complacent because they have no idea what they want. And so they fall into one of two categories when it comes to clarity. They either have what we call complacency hyperopia, and hyperopia is a optometry term for farsightedness. They've got the big vision, Daniel. You know them. They've got the big vision. They've got all these ideas, but then they cannot see the first step to take to get towards that big vision. So they stay stuck. Or they're on the other side of clarity and they have what we call complacency myopia. Myopia is an optometry term for nearsightedness. They are busy all the time. They're doing this, they're doing that, but they have no idea where they're going. And so with clarity, we're trying to get that 2020 focus and really just trying to get you clear on what it is that you want. The second step that you have to take, Daniel, is that we got to gather information. All right. Now, gathering information, this is a double-sworded trap here because there's a lot of people that are listening right now that they love to gather. They love to gather all the books, all the audios, all the courses, and that's great. We have to gather that. But then we have to go to step 3, which is filtering, because now we have to be able to separate the distracting from what's useful. And our success in the past was really based upon the information that we had access to. So if you go back 40, 50 years, your success was really determined on, hey, what information do you have access to? Or if you go back even further, you didn't even have the ability to learn how to read. And so your success was really dependent on that. Today is the opposite. We've got access to all the information we could possibly want right here in our fingertips. And so today, your success is dependent upon how well you can filter information. The fourth step inside of this is guidance. And that's like exactly what you did, Daniel. Right before you got this idea, the first thing you did was you said, hey, I'm going to get a coach and a guide, somebody that's already done this. And that's phenomenal because what that does is that's going to help save you time, energy, and money. You're going to be able to leverage their wisdom. But the trap inside of this one is that most people think if I get a mentor, well, they're going to do the work for me and they're going to solve all my problems. That's not what a mentor's for. Okay. Or they want an immediate result from the mentor, and that's not what it's for. A mentor is there to guide you, not to drag you or do the work for you. The fifth phase or step is relationships. It's getting people that are like-minded around you that are moving in the same direction. You know, the trap inside of this one is comfort of proximity and history. Our friend group is based upon our comfort level. And oftentimes we won't go to the next level because we're not tied into the right relationships that are moving at a higher level. We walk into those rooms, we look around, and we go, oh, these people are so much more successful. We get a little bit timid. But hey, those are the environments that you have to get around in order to begin to move. The sixth step is action. Now, you may be saying, well, Chris, why is action so far down the step process? Well, you know, you've got to go through these things, be clear, gather, filter, get some guidance, get some relationships, but you have to take action. You have to get a result in order to do the next step, which is evaluation. So if you don't take action, right, action answers questions. And a lot of people, they'll gather, they'll know what they want, they'll get mentorship, they'll sit under the mentor, just keep asking questions, but they won't do anything. And when you take action, your action will answer questions that the mentor cannot answer or that you do not even know how to ask. So we have to take action. And then step 7 is evaluation. And that's looking in the mirror. And that's, really being self-aligned and being willing to look in the mirror and say, hey, did I do what I said that I wanted to do? Example of that is, like my son, he loves baseball, and each and every single day as we prepare for like a tournament or off season, he keeps a journal and he's using these 7 steps. So, what does he want? This last one he wanted to hit a home run in Cooperstown. And I said, great. All right. So let's gather some information. So he's, got a hitting coach. He is reading books on hitting, books on mindset for hitting. He's around other ball players all the time. He's practicing every single day. But what we did was we have him journal it out of what he did every day. So that way we can look back at the result and say, hey, you can't be mad at the result that you didn't get from the work that you didn't do. All right. So when we get to Cooperstown, if you hit a home run or not, it's going to be based upon what you did. So let's evaluate. Well, Daniel, I'm excited to share with you, man. That kid hit 3 home runs in Cooperstown. And we can point back and evaluate what he did. And so what do we do next? We go right back into the cycle of what do you want next? How do we gather information for it? How do we filter it? Who needs to guide you on that? What other relationships do you need to be around? What action steps do you need to take? Let's evaluate that again. And so this cycle, Daniel, over and over will break the chains of complacency.
It's awesome, man. Yeah, I mean that action step, that's the one that I consistently see people miss,
Yeah.
right? And you get the entire like done for you world out there, and you just
Yes.
and by the way, if you're putting together an offer into the marketplace, nothing will sell more.
Right.
Nothing will sell better or stronger quicker than the
Right.
done for
That's
you
for you.
offer.
Right.
But ultimately, there's nobody can do anything of true significance for you.
Correct.
You can get the external can guide, but ultimately, nobody can teach you the way you can teach yourself
Right.
through the action
Right.
and the feedback and the
Yeah.
evaluation,
Right.
right? And so, now, if you prefer to get hit in the head only a few times instead of 1,000 times, you should get guidance and
Right.
relationships and
Yeah.
so on, right? And information.
That's correct.
But the thing, I think sometimes the danger is people say, "Hold on, I took those steps, and I still got knocked around a little bit,"
Yeah.
and they weren't expecting that.
Right.
But it's to be expected.
It is to be
It's
expected.
just that instead of being battered, you might only have a black eye,
Right.
and that's okay.
Well, and that's the thing is people try to separate success and failure. Success on the left and failure on the right, and we're really trying to avoid that. But the truth of the matter is that failure is in front of success. And so you really have to understand that it's okay to fail. That is learning. And so what I like to say, Daniel, is like, I have never lost a single dime in business. Out
Mm.
of 15 years of business, I've never lost a single dime, but I have paid a whole lot of tuition. Okay. I mean, I've paid a whole lot of tuition because you have to look at it as learning. Things aren't going to go exactly as you plan out. But let me tell you, if you follow these steps, if you're going through the cycle again and again and again, yep, there's going to be some hurt. Yes, there's going to be some dips, but you're going to be a whole lot further and you're going to know a whole lot more. You're going to be a whole lot stronger at the end of this process. I tell you that.
I love it. And at the end of all that, it's like, why does any of it even matter to begin with? Why does this whole thing matter? And business is just so cool because it's this place where you get to go through all of what we just talked about. You got to get those bruises and so on. But what you're really finding out is who the heck are you? You're finding out, how do I respond to that? Do I fold? Do I get up? Do I react? Do I get emotional? Do I blame? Do I own my outcome? Who am I? And am I basically being all that God put me here to be, like to ultimately even be an expression of himself through you, if you're willing to sit in the classroom and take the action, learn the lessons, integrate them, evaluate them, and keep moving. And that's why to me, business is just so cool. It's just an arena where those things get to come up and you get to work with them. Very cool. Well, man, Chris, this is awesome. I appreciate you being on so much. I want to remind everybody to go dive in, drift to drive. Maxwell Leadership is the organization, and the vast majority of you listening have already heard of Maxwell, obviously, so I don't have to explain who they are, what they are, but the preeminent leadership coaching organization really in the world. And so it's a true honor to have you on, man. I've personally just enjoyed this a lot. Thank you, Chris.
Thank you.
And guys, if you're listening, we bring guests like Chris Robinson on here asking nothing of you other than to learn, right? This is, and to go through his process, basically make it part of his 7-step integration. And that's all for you. The only thing we ask in return is simply, if it gave you value, share it, put it out there, send it to somebody, send it to 2 people. Why? Transparently, simply because it tells the algorithm that there's value here, and it will show that to more people, and more people will get help. And that's it. That's the only thing we ask of you. So I love having you listening. Love having you on, Chris. Thank you so much. This is Masters of Business. We're going to see you on the next one.